themselves.
That's right. So we've had this global system running. We know for hundreds of years, in reality, there never was democracy in Britain. Although it proclaimed it all the time they had a democracy, they never ever had that, because the British elite watched the French Revolution very, very carefully. And they knew that this was a movement that was going to keep going and pop up again and again, this drive for democracy, where people wanted a say in their life and their lifestyles. Therefore, they decided to give the public a fake, a front. And it's worked very, very well. Margaret Thatcher, in one of her speeches, said that we are part of the parallel government that's unelected by the public. She said she was a member. She was simply, again, reiterating what Carroll Quigley said, Professor Carroll Quigley, when he also mentioned this parallel government. So they've been at it for a long, long time. Their idea was to unite the world and unite many different tribes and peoples, cultures, through conflict. And therefore, the fastest way to do it was to create oppositions. They took over a good chunk of Europe and Siberia by the Soviet system. That standardized a massive chunk of it. They used the same technique in the Far East under the guise of communism, and now they call them democratic countries. But what they did was standardize one system copied from the British exoteric system into their system, and you have a standardized world now. Now it's time to bring it all together. Now that we're all the same education systems, we're taught the same nonsense in school, we're all taught the same fake facts and histories and so on. So now they can standardize us quite simply and easily. And the front organization for this is the United Nations. When you look at the foundations, and that's how the parallel government operated, was the creation of foundations with masses of money to fund their NGOs. The Soviet system was run by NGOs. Their leaders were picked by the Politburo. We now have them picked by the parallel government.
And the U.S. and British governments, allied foundations, openly ran the Soviet Union. So if you want to know what the future is, you only need to read what the foundations are saying. Why don't you tell folks what the foundation's main goals are, where we are in the world system, how deep we're actually into it, and what you think we're going to see with the economy unfold. And we're going to go to calls in the next few years, Alan.
Well, what they've said already is that the system they will bring in has to wean us away from our selfish need for self-preservation and accumulation of personal wealth, regardless of the class you're born into.
So that's getting rid of our instinct to become independent, take care of ourselves in the hierarchy of needs, saying it's selfish to have a self-preservation mode. That's what all this environmentalism that's fake is about, is to make us feel bad about being humans so they can train us on loving our servitude, loving our feudal serfdom.
That's right. And it's also part of the British system of the Royal Institute of International Affairs, which runs the Council on Foreign Relations. And they have said that the world we're bringing in is one of servitude to the world state, and they will decide from the top what servitude means. It means giving your whole life, your whole activity, your energy, your very thoughts to the world state. It's based on the doctrine of Plato.
And who can have children? Eugenics, yes.
Yeah, Plato was a member of the ancient societies. He studied in Egypt. He was initiated in Egypt, the Palestine area, and then India. That was the standard route they went on. He wrote about it himself. And then he said in the book called Republic, the one that H.G. Wells said was his Bible, Plato said, what's the problem about owning all this money and having castles? He says, you're afraid of being robbed by the people. You're afraid you have to pay all your servants, etc. Isn't it far better that the people, under the guise that you're ruling them on their behalf, they build the castle for you, they supply its maintenance, they pay for the servants, they pay for anything that's stolen, they'll replace it for you. That's what we have today. This new system with its higher level of, and they'll still call themselves servants, the Kissinger types will live in their massive palaces, chauffeur-driven, etc., and still pretend they're part of you, the same as you. This was the Soviet system.
And every new crisis they create, they will always be the saviors for the next solution, which is even deeper into dehumanization and degradation. Here's an example. About a year ago, I have some employees, so the Texas Workforce Commission sent me a filing in the mail, and it said, you now have to answer these hundreds of questions every year. This is a North American Union survey. And I went on my show. I went on the web. I put it on the website, Infowars.com, and people commented that it wasn't real and it was fake. Now I have an image up on screen of Kroger's, and it says product of U.S., Mexico, and Canada. Or product of U.S., Canada, and Mexico. So everything's converting over to this. As you know, they started a year and a half ago. It's in my film Endgame, Blueprint for Global Enslavement, merging the European Union and the North American Union. Bush goes to the Rose Garden with Merkel and Barroso, announces it, but then anybody that talks about it is called a kook by Rush Limbaugh. So how do you see this conversion happening into the next year as they continue to say it doesn't exist, while on the other side they say it does exist and is happening? I mean, how do you see the mind slaves out there who've been conditioned that this doesn't exist? I guess the conditioning is just meant to neutralize them long enough so they debate whether it exists or not until it's too late and already in place?
Yes, most folk are never really in a conscious reality at any time. Most of the people who are brainwashed, and that's the majority of the public, who get their reality from television. Television is so surrealistic, you cannot possibly retain your sanity and your cognitive thinking abilities and reasoning powers and watch it and enjoy it at the same time. You can't have both. It's meant to put you into a strange state where gradually, through osmosis almost, you come to accept new facts without ever consciously thinking through those facts. You adopt them, and you're upgraded like a computer program each time you look into it. And here's a bunch of new facts, and you'll parrot them too, and you won't even remember you had different facts that you parroted yesterday. That's already in society. That's how most folk are working today.
And that's what Orwell talked about, where it didn't matter if they said we're always at war with East Asia, and the next day we were never at war with East Asia. In Big Brother's world, they had to go back and destroy all the old newspapers and TV programs. Here, they just run it all parallel and say, I mean, they've skipped to the final phase where Winston's on the gurney being tortured, and he says, do I have 4 fingers, 2 fingers, 5 fingers, 10 fingers? And he says, look, just tell me how many fingers to see. And he said, no. What I want you to do is see all fingers at once and not be able to differentiate and just lay there like a jellyfish. And he goes, oh, now I see. I love Big Brother. And O'Brien says, now you understand. We're here to tear you apart and dominate you. We are the priest of power, survival of the fittest. This is about crushing humanity and even ourselves and reducing the language down to nothing. And we see they've now done that.
They have done it. There are people who are halfway waking up. And it's like Winston on the table again, and he says, "I'm really trying to see 4." And O'Brien says, "That's not good enough. You've got to really believe it." And so they're in a quagmire really of conflicting facts, because fear works in most people. People are afraid. And this, again, is why we're getting this predictive programming of the coming conflicts.
And O'Brien, finish in a moment, this is so key, O'Brien wants him to have that mental break into delusion, into mental illness. That's what the schools do. They train you how to be insane. It's insane to want to drink fluoride and eat GMO food. It's insane to drink aspartame and MSG and excitotoxins. It's insane to have cancer up by 4,000% and diabetes and autism. It's insane to be attacking innocent countries and to have the White House press secretary say Iraq loves us, they all love us. Meanwhile, they have polls over there of 90+% hating what the United States does, but she comes to the U.S. and says, no, they all love us.
That's right. Yeah, the official version is you see, we're living under what's becoming open authoritarianism. It truly is the Orwellian system. And yet it's only to be for part of a phase, the 30-year phase, and then in comes the Huxleyan part of it, because at the end of the 30 years and during the 30 years, they hope to bring forth the new type of enhanced human that will serve them better, that will be unable to even dream of conflict against their masters.
And this is a 30-year hot war against humanity. Then it goes into the THX 1138 lobotomized suboid population.
Yes, and this present generation is dying off. It's dying off, even in the Army's war college's own figures. And the studies they do, you have to really look at their studies. They use history to the maximum. That's why they chose 30 years. They studied the 30 Years' War.
And they say, we've got the American people, we've enslaved them. And that's what's so horrifying, is to read all this, to show the viewers this, to know they're cold-bloodedly doing this. This is not our military. This is not our government. I mean, what is this we're facing? What is this scientific technocracy?
Yes. Well, as I say, the military college has already had a big bunch of articles up on projected population declines in the West. because they've been following it for 50